Greetings and welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ plus authors. I'm Anita Kelly, and my guest today is Jess Wells. Hello, Jess.
Oh, hello, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm really honored to be amongst the women that you've interviewed for this series. Quite the crowd.
Oh, I feel honored to have you. I don't think I told you how I actually recently came across your name. My wife and I love to go to antiquarian bookstores and used bookstores, and so we were recently, and I knew you. I was friends with you on Facebook, like with all the LGBTQ authors for years, I think, right?
Yeah.
But I found this book. It's called Contemporary Lesbian Writers of the United States, a bio-bibliographical critical source book. And you're in it.
You know what? I don't have a copy of it, but I have kind of a picture of the cover, I think.
Okay.
I'm so thrilled to be in that.
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's an awesome resource book. And yes, you are among these brilliant writers, as you should be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And speaking of brilliant writers, you have had quite a career in literature. So I just let's go back a little ways and tell me, when did this begin? When did you start writing?
Well, my mother's favorite story is that when I was 5 years old, I used to sit between the sofa and the wall and with my Raggedy Ann doll. And one day I crawled out from behind the sofa and said, I wish they could talk for themselves. This is such hard work. So that was the beginning of telling stories. And then in terms of deciding I was going to write fiction, I have a degree in economics, but I took creative writing classes to keep my grade point average up because I wasn't really very good at it. And I was going to go to law school. I took my LSATs, and then I decided I just didn't want to become that kind of a person. So I took the money, a little bit of money I saved to go to law school, and I thought, what's the most frightening thing you can think of to do? It was go to Europe alone. Ooh. So I packed a little bag, smaller than a backpack, and I told my mother I was going for 2 years, and for 1 year. I told her 1 year. I knew I was going for 2, and I stayed for 3.5.
Wow.
And I rode around on trains in the beginning, and I was reading Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex. And I decided, because I could just get off a train at a platform and walk across the platform and get on a train going in the other direction, that I could do anything I wanted to do. Wow. And so I thought, I want to write fiction. And when I got back to the United States in 1980, I had 2 books out in 1980. One was Run, which is prose poems, so small, and I illustrated it myself with collages. It was so small it didn't even have a spine. But I also put out A History of Prostitution in Western Europe, which was inspired, frankly, by de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, and this idea, oh my God, the idea that it's, the oldest profession nonsense. And, how does it rise and fall with women's status in general? Anyway, that kindled a lifelong love of research, which eventually led me into historical fiction.
Wow. That is quite a journey. That really is. Yeah.
So 6 novels, 5 books of short stories, and then several books of social commentary. So I edited a couple of lesbian erotica stories, and then I edited 2 books on lesbian parenting. So that's about the vitae. That's what it meant.
Wow, that is incredible. Yeah. That must have been so much fun, just traveling around Europe, really, no timeline, just,
Right?
Yeah. Very bohemian.
Yeah, it was. It was I actually started writing when I was living in squats in London, which you would never have in America. But in England, if you could get into an abandoned building or a building that was, for example, former projects, and you could get the electrical to work, the government had to deliver mail to you, and they would never dream of sending the sheriff around to throw you out. So all of these politicos and bohemians and artists lived in these squats. And that's how I had the money and the time to start writing.
Wow, that is awesome. And you're right. That would never happen in the United
Right?
States. No,
Never.
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 No,
Never.
nope,
Yeah.
nope. That's so cool.
Yeah.
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 So right now I have a nephew who is over at Durham University in the UK. He's actually getting his master's in finance, but he's also playing American football. And they're
Great.
yeah, oh yeah, he's loving life, you know. And his I think that the degree program is only 1 year, so I am just so hoping that he just hangs out there when he's finished and just explores and just does what he wants for a little while, you know.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. It
yes,
really frees the mind.
yeah. I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell him your story.
Okay, good.
Yeah, give him a little incentive. So when you started writing, when you started publishing, I should say, did you like really expect the degree of notoriety that you've received?
Yeah, that question's so interesting to me. I wanted to say, do I have
Oh,
notoriety?
you
I
do, girl.
I feel that I've become quite obscure, really. And I was thinking the other day, the phrase languishing in obscurity. There's
Mm.
no languishing here. I work really, really hard, and
Yeah,
I still feel kind of obscure, but
really.
I love it. I really love it. So I feel that my life's work is to dramatize the world of women and the things we face and
Hmm.
the way that we face them. So, for example, the Mandrake Broom is very based in reality. All the witch burnings are factual. All of the remedies are factual, and it looks at the idea. It looks at every single stereotype we have about witches and weaves them into a story in a way that explains why they are stereotypes. It's set in a very eventful book. I mean, there's lots of action in this book, but the idea is that there's a difference between internal strength and external weakness. So the core metaphor is a very powerful center that's walking around in the trappings of someone with no power,
Wow.
and the
Hmm.
other way around. So that's the witch craze. And Jaguar Paloma and the Cape Town Bar
Hmm.
features two women, these extraordinary women, one of whom, unbeknownst to her, can control the weather. And the other is a woman who is so gorgeous. She's just stop traffic kind of gorgeous. And the only way that she can exist on her own, with her own agency, is to hide herself behind big hats and cloaks and things that hide her beauty. And they meet and they form like a trading post in the Colombian jungle that draws women from all and the dispossessed, really, the dispossessed and cast off women. So women with illegitimate children and women who have been raped and women who have, are just people that their parents throw them out on the streets. And they come into this this village, and then all kinds of chaos breaks loose.
Wow.
So
That is how is that classified? What genre is that?
That's actually magical realism. And I'm so happy about this book because I've always wanted to write magical realism, and a little bit of it creeps into each of my pieces. But this one's full on, full blown magical realism. And in a way, it's an homage to the women of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, which is a book that, I mean, he invented magical realism. And that book is so stellar. I have read it 5 times. And the 5th time I read it, I was thinking, boy, that woman must have been so pissed off that this happened to her. And so then I started looking at the women, and then they morphed into these other characters. So Jaguar Paloma and the Cake Town Bar.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you know, it's the character, I don't think you mentioned her name, the one who was trying to hide her beauty. That's so contrary to how women are groomed and oriented, right?
Right.
We're groomed to like always look good and present well. So how did you come up with that kind of, theme for that particular character?
Well, if you look at really beautiful women on the street and you see the way the world interacts with them, and it's not just doors are opened for them, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And they're objectified, but they're also kind of, in a way, they're almost consumed. It's like they become like a ham that men like take little slivers from. And so in this story, she lives in both worlds. She lives in her hidden world in the town, which is called Tartatanango, which is Colombian slang for Cake Town. So Tartatanango. And then she also, I don't want to give a lot away, but she also lives on the other side of the tracks as this extraordinarily beautiful woman. Wow. And so there's some very interesting parallels there.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it. So is she Jaguar, or is the other woman Jaguar?
The other woman is Jaguar. Okay. Jaguar Paloma is very, very tall, really just enormously tall, big woman. And she has no idea that her moods have anything to do with anything going around her. But and it was in part inspired by all of this outrageous crazy climate change weather, this extreme weather. So there are people there who go through just horrible droughts and rainstorms that go on for weeks. And
it's also like a lot of people walk around and just are clueless about how their mood has an impact on those around them, right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. That does happen a lot.
Yeah, it does.
That does happen a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and A Slender Tether, which is it's a novel in linked stories, and it explores another aspect of being an outcast, really. Christine de Pizan is considered the first feminist in Europe. And she wrote in 1391. And she was the first woman to make her living as a writer, the first lay woman to ever publish a book, and the first lay woman to write a book about women. And she, in her book called The City of Ladies, which is a book about a city completely populated by women with no men in it.
Wow.
She uses that book to talk about women of great virtue. And I'm not talking about sexual virtue. I'm talking about morality and capabilities. And so she really was the first one to stand up for women. And I had to think when I was researching her that if she was the first woman to write a book, full stop, and to write a book about women, how must she have felt being an ambitious woman in a world like that?
Yeah.
Right. And so what does it mean to be ambitious, and how she must have felt like almost a vicious person amongst the decorative, right? She is an intellectual in a court filled with little chippy birds, right?
Yeah.
So
what was it like to be herself? Was she allowed to be herself, and was she always walking that tightrope, in the company of others? Yeah.
Exactly. And she turned out to write 20 books, which is quite a feat with a quill and parchment.
Yeah.
On all kinds of things. She wrote biographies of kings. She wrote polemics. She wrote actually a manual on warfare, which just it took about 100, 200 years before they would put her name on it.
Really?
After they published it. Yeah. So she wrote the only poem about Joan of Arc that was published in Joan of Arc's lifetime. So yeah, she's an amazing woman, and she's now taught in medieval history classes.
That's so cool. As it should be, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that is so A Slender Tether is kind of picking up on her work.
Yes, it's one of the three stories looks at her early years, just on the cusp of when she starts writing, and a lot of it also is based in fact. So there's a fire, for example, that actually turns out to be an attempt to assassinate the king, and the king in fact did go mad just prior to that, and there's all kinds of factual stuff going on in there, which I just love. That's why I like historical fiction so much.
Yeah, I always think that when you write historical fiction, one has to do an awful lot of research.
Yeah.
And did you do a lot of research like prior to sitting down and beginning these novels, or did you research as you went along? How did that go for you?
Well, I'm constantly researching, in the sense that I read an enormous amount about history, and I'm always looking for a scene that's described in a visual way, because all my stuff starts with a visual image that is so interesting to me. And then I start digging and looking at things around it and what happened and why. So it's really all about the theme. You can't really write just a story. This happened, then that happened, and then this happened. That's not art. Art is when you make a comment on the human condition. And that's the theme of a book. That's the thread that has to carry through the whole piece of work. So Straight Uphill, for example, looks at 5 generations of women chocolatiers in a little Italian village. And it looks at the different facets of romantic love. I thought I was just going to, dash off some, cute romance. I thought there might be a lot of money, a lot of money in it. That's a good laugh. But as I started writing, I realized, wait a minute, there's fear of love. There's love of purpose. There's love of families in their various incarnations. There's sorrow as a form of love. There's the courage to choose love despite fear, love of country. I mean, there's all kinds of different love. And I also thought it was going to be a book that was modern. And it started in the modern times, and I just couldn't help myself. So it's modern. There's a section on World War II, then it goes back to World War I, and then one of my favorite times is the 1600s when chocolate first came to Europe.
And where did it come from?
Well, it was brought to Europe by Columbus when he got back, 1492, and he gave it to Isabella, and she had no idea what it was or how to do anything with it, so she just threw it away.
Oh.
And then it took quite a while, but the figured out how to make it. The Spanish monks did, and it took a long time for it finally to get over to Italy, and then it spread through Europe. So,
do you teach?
I used to teach. Yeah, I used to.
You would
I used
be
to teach about
an awesome professor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. I used to travel around and go to literary conferences and teach about theme, teach about setting, how important setting is and how you can make it work for your story. I started out teaching how to find time to write, because that seemed to be the biggest question that beginners had.
Still is.
It still is.
Yeah.
Do you write fiction?
I do. And, National November Writers Month has pretty much come and gone. And, and me too.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah,
It's really tough. Yeah.
So tell us more then about Mandrake Broom. This is about like the witch trials, and like I imagine for that, like you uncovered a lot of things that probably like pieces of history that people didn't even know about, and I did see somewhere that you did a presentation on like herbal remedies from that era.
Yes, and from that era, yes, exactly. It's so interesting to me see this. I get so excited about this research stuff.
Cool.
There was the first university, the first medical university established in Europe was in a place called Salerno, Italy, and it made a lot of sense because it was a crossroads for the Persians, who were very, very advanced in their medicine, and also for the Far East to come into Europe. And they were so advanced that they were doing ocular surgery for cataracts in the 1300s.
No way.
Yes. It's just phenomenal. But they had a recipe for a painkiller, an anesthesia, anesthetic that was really effective, and it's used in my book actually. And so they trained women there as well as men, partly because Asian men, Persian men would not let men attend to their women. So this group of women called Salernistas were very highly trained, and they would fan out across Europe and do this very advanced medicine to the kings and queens. They would deliver the queens of their children. They would heal people of all kinds of diseases. They were world renowned. And so the story, and partly it was based on the work of a woman named Trotula. And she wrote a book, the only book at that point on women's health. And it stood as the primary book on women's health for 400 years, which frankly says a lot about how nobody else was interested in women's health, but it was pretty good. And the idea was that this book was so important that it could not fall out of print, which of course there wasn't printing at the time until later. But all of the scribes were controlled by the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have this fight to try to get medical knowledge out to the, not just to the Salonistas, but to anyone who was doing any kind of herbal medicine and who would take this knowledge, how to get it out in Europe while dodging the witch burnings,
Okay.
which were really, really very, very widespread at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. That's fascinating. Did you know this before you started writing Mandrake Broom, or did you learn this through your research, like just doing other research and happened upon this?
I happened upon it. I saw a movie which just upset me so much. It's called The Burning Times. And after I saw it in San Francisco, I just wept. I could not believe it. And one of the core concepts was, look at what this did, what this witch burnings did to our genetic pool. The women who were capable and who had amassed any kind of money at all were specifically targeted by the church, because the church would come in and get the tax rolls and identify these women who had assets. And then they would kidnap them from the road. And that was a whole new industry. They would kidnap them from the road and then imprison them and charge them for their transport, charge them for their time in prison, charge them for the trial. And after they were found guilty, the church would then basically take all of the rest of their assets.
Of course.
So this movie just blew my mind, and I thought, okay, someday I'm going to write about this. And it took me a number of years to get to the place where I felt like I could actually handle this much material. I had already written a novel, Aftershocks, and also a small novel that's based a lot on, well, not the activities, but the settings are based on my travels all over the world, called The Price of Passion. It's a book of lesbian erotica. But I had put those out, but I still didn't feel like I really could handle big material. And thankfully, with the help of Renata Stendhal, who's a very good writer of her own, helped teach me to write, to work with the novel. So out it came.
What a journey.
Yeah. I know. It's fun stuff. I feel really grateful to have a passion, and that it's able to, drive my life.
Yeah. I can hear your passion. Like, really, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
So also, you just released an audiobook, right?
Yes. Oh my God. How much fun is that?
Yeah.
Because you get to, you start with an image that you get from somewhere else, and it goes in your head and you daydream about it for a really long time. And then you put it on the page in black and white. And that's kind of a shock to see it there. It's always, never is as good as the daydream, but you do your best. You get it on the page. And then you see it in a book form. It has a cover and it's nice and crisp. But then you turn it into an audiobook, and the book has a waveform. You see your words in a wave format.
Yeah.
And so that really blows your mind. The thing I like most about it is that you get to be a storyteller. Is I love being a storyteller and to present my work in the way that I intended it to be spoken, really, with all of the intonations and the snide remarks that sound like snide remarks, because they're just not on paper. It's really, really fun. It's a lot of work, but I taught a class down at this most recent Saints and Sinners LGBT literary conference in New Orleans about how to turn your novel into audiobooks.
Oh,
because it's a
fun.
very wild market. There's money to be made there, a little bit of money to be made there,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do it for free. You can do it
Really?
yourself.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, with a very small investment, maybe less than $600, and you've
Wow.
got everything that you need. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And what book is that? What's the title of that one?
Um, So I have four of them that
Oh,
now are
cool.
audiobooks. So Jaguar Paloma and the Caketown Bar, that's an audiobook as well. And The Mandrake Broom, When the Witches Fought Back, that's an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
The first audiobook I did was a modern story, set of short stories called The Disappearing Andersons of Loon Lake. And it's about people living around a small fishing lake in northern Michigan. And then it'll come out in this next month is A Slender Tether, also in audiobook as well.
Oh, that's
So
so cool.
it's fun, fun, fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. I love to listen to audiobooks. I do a lot of traveling for work, and just in the last several months have gotten back into it because we weren't even back at the office yet. And so I love to listen to audiobooks on my travels and when I'm on my tractor mowing the lawn.
That's great. I thought you were going to say your treadmill and you said tractor. That's great. Do you have a lot of acreage?
No, no, just like a little over, probably like an acre and a quarter around there. Not a lot,
Nice.
not a lot,
Nice. That's great.
but it's
That's great.
it's mostly mowable. So yeah, yeah.
Marvelous. Marvelous. That's
That's so.
good.
Where would if someone wanted to purchase your audiobooks, where would they go?
Amazon.com, audible.com, Spotify. So when you go to Amazon.com, there are now three ways that you can buy my work, the paperback, the ebook, and the audiobook.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that where
Yes.
they would go if someone wanted to buy like Jaguar Paloma and the Caketown Bar, like the actual book? Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. It's also carried by Barnes and Noble
Okay.
and the Independents. And of course, you can always go to jesswells.com and I'll even autograph it for you. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
All right, folks. That's where you go. Go to jesswells.com and you can get an autographed copy. That's special. I love autographed copies. I have a whole collection of them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
good.
I
Very
think
good.
almost every one of my Radcliffe books are autographed by her.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
she
Nice.
was so gracious. I brought in a stack, like probably a couple stacks, and she sat there and wrote something in every one of them. So
That's great.
yeah,
And you know what? That feels really good when someone does that. That's just it makes you feel not alone.
yeah,
You know, it makes you feel like there's somebody out there listening. It's a great feeling.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Definitely
Uh-huh.
true.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Saints and Sinners Awards, right?
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
and you've been nominated for like I don't know how many Lammys and awards through Saints and Sinners. So
Yeah.
has like being recognized in this way by peers and by readers has that changed the way you write or changed you even?
It's changed me in that it heals me, it feeds me. It it's a very solitary thing, writing.
Yeah.
So it's nice that there's somebody out there. Jaguar Paloma and the Caketown Bar won the Nautilus Silver Book Award for work with a social impact when it came out, and that
Cool.
meant the world to me
Heck yeah.
because I so wanted people to be able to hear what I was trying to say about how many women have been oppressed by this idea of so-called legitimacy.
Yeah.
And I loved that. That just, it meant the world. It made me feel like not only was there somebody out there, but the concepts were getting through.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that is. That's like, someone gets you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And you did it,
Yeah.
you got to them,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And I
So,
should have submitted it for the Lammy bisexual category. I must admit, I didn't even know there was one. I'm
okay.
bisexual now, and I just assumed I wasn't qualified for any of the awards. And it
Oh,
wasn't until I went down to Saints and Sinners this past fall that I went, oh, well, what am I doing sitting around, feeling like I'm on the outside of the outside. I
yeah.
could I
Yeah.
could get back in there.
You
So
could still do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And
yeah, go ahead.
well, and for any writers who might be listening, all of those awards, with the exception of the Lammys, I think it's all pay to play. You have to pay to submit your book, but it helps with sales more than anything else because the first thing in the blurb says Nautilus Book Award winner,
Yeah.
and then you get the description of the book. So
Mm-hmm.
I would
That's true.
encourage you to, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely submit.
Yeah. Have you ever gone to the Golden Crown Literary Society or submitted your work there?
I haven't, and I want to. I was thinking I was going to go this coming year. I would love that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But now I'm in between books. Well, that doesn't matter if I'm in
No,
between books, does
no,
it?
no, it
Yeah.
doesn't at all. Nope.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you gone? Do you love it?
Yeah, I've gone and it's a little overwhelming because it just grows, I think, every year, and there's so many people and so many authors. And I went to like some classes, right? There are different levels of like participation,
Mm-hmm.
and so I attended classes, and that was fun because I got to meet actually Finian Burnett, who she runs the writing academy for them. And so then I ended up a few years later applying to the academy and got in, and that was really it's a year
Nice.
long, yeah, 2 semesters, all virtual, and just really just helped me really take a look and examine the craft of writing, my craft, and make improvements. It was a great experience.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow, that's not easy to run something like that. That's excellent.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
yeah,
Yeah.
they do a great job with that.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. So, Jess, you have been kind of classified or associated with writers in the group of like feminist and lesbian forerunners. Um, is that how you see yourself, as like this forerunner of uh, feminism and feminist writings? And
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's my honor to be considered a pioneer,
yeah,
really. It was amazing in the 80s, and we can talk about that for a minute. I mean, I am bisexual now. I spent 23 years with women and now 20 with men, but regardless,
mm-hmm,
I'm absolutely a feminist writer.
mm-hmm,
And as I said, all art is commentary on the human condition. It has something to say about the human condition, and I'm constantly looking for something to say
yeah,
about that.
yeah,
The 80s, they were a really interesting time to write. I mean, we were creating some of the very first stirrings of lesbian culture.
yeah.
Our work was very autobiographical. They were narratives based on our own lives. They were more autobiographical than fictional. It was really important political work because we felt like we were getting it down. We were getting it on paper, who we were on paper.
And
And that was terrific.
I
That was
felt like it
terrific.
was more grassroots too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, at some point, I must say, it started to get a little, I don't want to say twisted. It's get a little bit skewed. I would be told things like, well, you need more sex in this book.
Oh.
Or, well, no, these characters have to be lesbians. And then we began to write what I call "hear me roar" stories.
Mm-hmm.
Where the women had no flaws. They
Mm-hmm.
had no, and you can't have a real character without a shadow,
Yep. Yep.
right?
I
And
totally agree. Yeah. All
yeah,
heroes have that shadow side.
yeah, it was really hard for me to break out of that and start writing women who were antagonists and maybe men who were sympathetic. And it was a good transition, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you know, writing has changed since then.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more, I'll say more intense. And it seems to be fluffier these days.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are writers like Roxane Gay, who she's pretty intense, but yeah, like you just don't see that same intensity that you did in
Mm-hmm.
the 80s. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
The hard hitting stuff.
yeah, I remember I used to subscribe to a newsletter. It was like this lesbian newsletter, underground, kind of printed almost like it was all done on a typewriter almost and printed and stapled together.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but
Uh,
yeah, but that was the best.
there
Um,
was.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know.
Well, everything moves and changes, and we've made a lot of progress since then.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Definitely. I was just talking to someone last week about the fact that we don't even really have like gay and lesbian bars any longer, Like that was a place you went to meet people and hang out. And
yeah.
that's even changed. And I mean, we want to be mainstream, right? We want to be equals. But I don't know. I feel a sense of loss.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It makes sense. I mean, we started them because they were the only places where we felt safe,
Yeah.
where we could be ourselves. And then they started disappearing because there were other places we felt safe. And so that's a good thing that you feel safe elsewhere.
Yeah.
But it's sort of sad because it was also a way to create culture,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I live in San Francisco. And
Okay.
so, I mean, some of the changes are just like, you couldn't write it. It's so bizarre that the lesbian bar was turned into a bar that's now called Elbow Room. Sort of like
Wow. Wow.
elbowing out the lesbians, out of
Yeah.
their own place. It was phenomenal.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I'm on the other coast. So,
Ah,
yeah.
good.
So,
Nice.
um,
Nice.
so Jess, we are
Yes.
almost out of time for today. But it has been a pleasure talking with you. And I'm just wondering if you have any parting words for our listeners today.
Oh, that's nice. I'll tell you, to the readers out there, we love you. You are the reason we work. We are talking to you every single day at the typewriter, at the keyboard anyway. And to the writers, I would say, keep your eye on the art, not the commerce of it. You're making art, you're commenting, as I said, on the human condition. And that has nothing to do with what sells. So those would be my parting words. And a great thank you to you, Anita.
No, thank you, Jess. It has been a pleasure talking with you. And listeners, just once again, Jess Wells is with us today, and her some of her books include Jaguar Paloma and the Caketown Bar, the Mandrake Broom, which is a series. Is that it?
No, it's just the one.
Just the one? Okay.
Yeah.
And then Jess also has a slew of short stories. One that should be coming out on audiobook, A Slender Tether. So, pick up some of those books and check them out. I think you'll all be quite pleased. So thanks again, Jess, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes. So until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.